All right, good afternoon. Um, the Secretary General has just returned to New York after having been in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia yesterday, where he witnessed what he called a historic moment, the signing of a peace agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Speaking to reporters with the Saudi foreign minister after the event, the Secretary General expressed his deep appreciation to the role played by His Majesty, the custodian of the two holy mosques, for bringing the parties together. The Secretary General noted that the agreement means there is a wind of hope blowing in the Horn of Africa. He pointed to other progresses made in the region, including talks between the leaders of Djibouti and Eritrea. While in Jeddah, he met separately with King Salman as well as the Crown Prince and the Foreign Minister. In all of these meetings, he discussed the funding shortfall for UNRWA and the situations in Syria's Idlib province as well as in Yemen. And I want to say just we expect a statement later today, but I do want to say for now that we extend our condolences to the victims of Typhoon Mangkhut in the Philippines and China, as well as those of Hurricane Florence that hit North and South Carolina. In the Philippines, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is working closely with the government to coordinate rapid assessment and response. Major areas of need include food, health, water, sanitation, and hygiene, as well as shelter. Access to high mountainous areas is often of concern, as well as potential floods and landslides. The United Nations stands ready to support the government's relief efforts as needed. And Martin Griffiths, the special envoy for Yemen, is in Sana'a, where he'll be there, also be there tomorrow. On Wednesday, he will travel to Riyadh for 2 days and then go onwards to New York to be here during the General Assembly. Over the weekend, the humanitarian coordinator for Yemen, Lise Grande, initialed a note verbal with authorities in Sana'a to enable the medical transfer of critically ill patients by chartered flights to medical facilities that is equipped to manage such cases. The World Health Organization is working with all parties to confirm the operating procedures for the humanitarian air bridge. And an independent international company has been contracted to review the medical records of the patients who were selected to ensure they are eligible for the service. The humanitarian air bridge will operate for an initial period trial of 6 months. And Nikolai Mladenov, the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process, said yesterday he was concerned at the attention of the Israeli authorities to demolish the Bedouin village of Khan el-Ahmar, also known as Abu el-Hilu, a community of 181 people, over half of whom are children. He calls on the authorities not to proceed with the demolition and to cease efforts to relocate Palestinian communities in the occupied West Bank. Such actions are contrary to international law and could undermine the chances for the establishment of a viable, contiguous Palestinian state. And today, Mr. Mladenov also extended his condolences to the family of Ari Fould, an Israeli-American civilian who was stabbed in the West Bank yesterday. Everyone must stand up to violence and condemn terror, Mr. Mladenov said. And today, the humanitarian coordinator in the occupied Palestinian territory, Jamie McGoldrick, announced the release of $1 million from the humanitarian fund for the occupied Palestinian territory to prevent the collapse of life-saving services in the Gaza Strip. The funds will be allocated to the UN-assisted emergency fuel program, which provides emergency fuel, mainly for backup electricity generators, to around 250 critical health, water, and sanitation facilities in the Gaza Strip. Well, the allocation will provide around enough fuel for 1.5 months. At least $2 million in additional support is still needed to cover the bare minimum. And on peacekeeping, our colleagues report that Nepalese peacekeepers serving with the UN mission in South Sudan was shot and wounded by a government soldier while traveling in a convoy in the town of Yi over the weekend on Saturday. The peacekeeper was evacuated to a UN base before being airlifted to Juba for further medical treatment. In a statement over the weekend, the special representative for the Secretary General, David Shearer, described the attack as unacceptable and said the perpetrator must be found and held accountable by the authorities of the government. He added it was beholden on the government to bring their forces under control. In the same statement, Mr. Scheer said it was disheartening that despite the signing of the revitalized peace agreement by all parties to the conflict days ago, fighting is continuing in South Sudan and Central Equatorial region. He said all forces must disengage as required by the peace agreement, and the parties must work together to build trust between themselves and with the people of South Sudan. And back here, as you will have seen, Rosemary DiCarlo, the head of the Political Affairs Department, briefed the Security Council this morning on developments in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And she recalled that the Secretary General has welcomed the commitments made by Chairman Kim Jong-un on September 5th to realize the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Under Secretary General DiCarlo also said the Secretary General during his upcoming high-level week during the General Assembly will discuss how he and the UN system can further support the parties and what steps can be further taken towards advancing sustainable peace, security, and complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula in accordance with relevant Security Council resolutions. He hopes that the Inter-Korean Summit, as well as the planned summit between the leaders of the U.S. and the DPRK, will further contribute to the process. And late on Friday, UN officials welcomed the outcomes of the Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco. The Secretary General said the summit had brought together actors demonstrating the vast opportunity afforded by climate action. They're betting on green because they understand it is the path to prosperity and a healthy planet. The UN Climate Change Executive Secretary Patricia Espinosa said the summit will encourage governments worldwide to step up their actions, demonstrating the vital role that states and regions and cities, companies, investors, and civil societies are playing to tackle climate change. The outcomes of the summit will provide a valuable contribution ahead of the General Assembly, the Climate and the New York Climate Week taking place in a few days' time, as well as for the Climate Change Conference that is scheduled for Poland in December. And there's more on the UNFCCC's website. Also, an update from on the declaration of shared commitments to UN peacekeeping, part of the Secretary General's efforts to renew our collective action to strengthen and support for UN peacekeeping operations. We're now pleased to announce that 109 countries have now endorsed the declaration. They represent 15 of the top 20 uniformed personnel contributors, according to accounting for 84% of all troop contributing and police contributing, 9 of the 13 states that host peacekeeping operations, 10 of the 15 current Security Council members, and 4 of the 5 incoming Council members, 8 of the top 10 countries by assessed financial contributions, which make up 80% of all contributions to peacekeeping. The Secretary General calls on all remaining member states to join in endorsing the declaration before the high-level event on 25th September. The list of endorsing countries is published daily on the website of the Peacekeeping Department. And a new report released today says that the UN Development Program mobilized $25 million to increase resilience and restore over 800 buildings for the most vulnerable people in Dominica, Antigua, and Barbuda, which were hit by 2 powerful back-to-back hurricanes a year ago. UNDP partnered with governments, the private sector, and other UN agencies to install more resilient roofs in devastated houses, and nearly 1,000 contractors were trained in more resilient recovery techniques. Thousands of tons of debris were also removed and recycled, allowing for further recovery of roads and important sites. Press conferences tomorrow at 11 a.m. in the press briefing room. There'll be a presentation of the 2018 Global TB report by the World Health Organization. And at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon, there'll be a press conference here by Lise Kingo, the head of the UN Global Compact. She will share highlights of the 2018 UN Global Compact Progress Report and upcoming UN Global Compact Leaders Summit. And I just do want to note that today is the last briefing as PGA spokesperson by Brendan Varma. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us. And starting tomorrow, we will have Monica Grayley, who will be the spokeswoman for the PGA for the 73rd session. Before Brendan's final adieu, I will take some questions. Yes, Linda.
Thank you, Steph. Regarding the peacekeeping declaration, you said that 10 out of the 15 Security Council members have signed on.
Yep.
I was wondering how many of them are permanent members.
That is such a valid question and underscores my lack of preparedness, because I should have the list with me, but it's publicly available, so we'll get you the list. welcome back. How are you, Rick?
I wanted to ask, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask if, has the Secretary General made any plans to invite any Rohingya representatives to the General Assembly? Rohingya refugees.
Yeah, no. I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any plans. I will have to look at all the side events that are planned, whether it's organized by the Secretariat or not. That may involve the situation in Myanmar, but I'm not aware of any plans on behalf of the Secretary General. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Stéphane. Did you have any update for Libya?
On Libya, no, I do not have anything today.
Thank you, Stéphane. Not sure whether you mentioned Yemen in the talks between the Secretary General and the Saudi king.
I did.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. But as you know, there has been an escalation in bombing, and there have been several casualties. Any comments?
I mean, I think the message for the Secretary General in the conflict in Yemen is clear, which is that all the parties should actively support the work of Martin Griffiths, his special envoy, who's currently in Sana'a, and then will be going to Riyadh later in the week. And he wants to see an end to the conflict, and he also calls on all the parties, including the coalition, to ensure that civilians are not hit and that civilian infrastructure is not hit either. Stéphane. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Secondly, you have read the statement by Mr. Mladenov on the Palestinian village. Does the Secretary General also...
All right, Mr. Mladenov represents the Secretary General in these matters, so he's the representative of the Secretary General in the region.
Yes, on that is a follow-up on the Yemen, actually. But because this situation, especially where children have been involved even a few hours ago in Yemen, they continue to die from bombing. After meeting the king and the prince, is the Secretary General satisfied the answer he received from the Saudi in trying to prevent this?
I would refer you back on his report on children in armed conflict. But second, the Secretary General will only be satisfied when he sees an end to the fighting and the end of the suffering of the Yemeni people. Mr. Varma.
No, I have... Can I
well,
have,
then
on this, another question. Actually, two questions. One is we had just on the press briefing room, Anka, we have the press conference with the parents of journalist Austin Tice that he's been held in Syria for 6 years now. Does the UN has any information that maybe can be useful for his
We
release?
have been, Austin's parents have been in touch with various UN officials. We're very aware of the case and we're following it very closely.
And then the last thing is a matter of another journalist. I received from Matthew Lee an email where he's asking me to ask you a question. Can I ask you the question, Matthew Lee?
You may ask me a question. The questions you choose to ask are your own responsibility.
I'm just telling you openly.
You don't need my permission to ask me a question.
Okay,
so if you have a question to ask me,
yeah, but it's not my question.
Well, no, but Stefano, it's your question is your responsibility.
Sure.
Okay, so you ask me a question.
Okay, so I ask you a question on behalf of...
No, you ask me your question. It's your responsibility. It's your question.
Well, I think I'm not risking anything. I don't know. But I'm going to ask you anyway. Matthew sent me an email where he says, where he wanted to ask this question. As a matter of due process, which diplomats of mission complain were the basis of the ban of inner city press? Do your hollow countries...
I think I have spoken at length...
...which don't like an independent media question to ban it for the UN?
Caro, I have spoken at length on the status of Mr. Lee and inner city press, I think in very clear terms. The decision was taken by the Secretariat without any inputs from any member states. Mr. Bass, do you have your own question?
I have my own question.
Are you on behalf of Linda?
No, I have my own question, and it's coming rather late because it's things that are developing while you're speaking, and I know you don't like that, but I wondered if you could get an initial reaction to the fact that we've seen President Putin, President Erdogan speaking in the last few minutes. I will read you the quote from President Putin. "We've decided to create a stage-based demilitarized zone of 15 to 20 kilometers in Idlib, supervised by Turkey and the Russian military police." What is the UN's reaction to that?
As you said, it's asymmetrical warfare when you're reading me things I haven't seen. Well, obviously, I think the meeting between President Putin and President Erdogan is a very important one that we hope can have a positive impact on the civilians that are in Idlib. They're at great risk. We will take a look very carefully at what was said, and we very much hope it's a positive development. Thank you.